Hello again, I'm Doug Smith, and this is the 6 November 2015 edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. Our guest today is Jim Garman. Jim's our town historian and has just been made president of the Portsmouth Historical Society, replacing longtime President Herb Hall, who will become the President Emeritus. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jim, can you give us a little background information? I know you've been a board member before and have a long history with the society. Can you talk a little bit about the background to it, when it was founded, things like that?
Sure. I've been dealing with Portsmouth history for about 40 years and written books and so on about it. And the thing about that I've learned more than anything else is that Portsmouth has a very vital, rich history, and not enough of it's known around the town. And so what I would like to do, along with the board of directors, is to create some energy and enthusiasm for Portsmouth history. The Historical Society has been there since 1939, been located in the same building we're in at the corner of Union Street and East Main Road. And I think that everybody knows we exist because they drive by there, but I think it's a matter of really getting people interested in our history. We did this in the 375th a couple of years ago, and that worked really well. And I think we need to do a lot more of that, though.
Yeah, I know Herb Hall has been recently been the president for quite a while. You might want to say a few words about him.
Sure. Herb's been around a long time. He's been a member of the Historical Society forever, and he's been the president of it for probably at least about the last 25 years or so. Before that, he was the treasurer, the custodian, and had a few other jobs as well. He's done really a great job in terms of keeping the organization going. He worked very hard at a time, maybe 20 years ago, to restore the building, restore the church inside, and through grants and so on that we were able to get. And he really was a prime mover in the organization and sort of the steady rock that held it all together. So he's been really a good asset. He's had some health problems lately, but we are going to keep him around. We're not going to let him get away. Yeah,
I think this President Emeritus position will keep him as an advisor and a resource for the committee,
sure,
or for the society. Mm-hmm. What kind of activities are conducted by the Historical Society?
We have a museum, and we have 3 buildings in our museum. We have the church that was built in 1864. We have the one-room schoolhouse that goes back to 1725, and we have a town hall that was built in the early 19th century. All of these have displays in them, archives, as well as in the church we have a rather substantial meeting room. So we have the museum open primarily from Memorial Day to Columbus Day on Sunday afternoons. One of the objectives, as I see it, is to try to have the museum open more often, and hopefully we can get that done. Also, we have a blog, we have a website. The website is portsmouthhistorical.com, and there's a great deal of Portsmouth information on there. People should really take the time to look through all the different pieces of that. Gloria Schmidt has done a really great job putting that together and running a blog on that so that people can get more information about Portsmouth history. In addition, both Gloria and Marge Webster and Carolyn Evans Carberry, have put displays together in the town library, displays of Portsmouth history, and they've had several of those in the last couple of years, and that's really a big draw as well. Ann Wagner also has done a lot of genealogical work for Portsmouth residents or people who came from Portsmouth one time or another, and she's a big resource as well. We have meetings from time to time, primarily in the spring to fall. We have lectures that are open to the public. We encourage everybody to come, and we hope that, among other things, we're going to be able to have on display the original Portsmouth Compact sometime in the spring, probably in March, because that's the 378th anniversary of the founding of Portsmouth. We hope to get the original town compact out of the state archives and have it on display, and probably have a short lecture about it as well, so that people can see that. It's a fascinating document, something you look at as a piece of paper that was written in Boston in 1638, and it's still in reasonably good shape. You can read the signatures and so on it. It's really quite a treasure for us, and an important, probably the most important archive in all of our history.
Yeah, it's just, it kind of blows your mind to think that we started back in 1638. You know, it's a long time ago.
It was, and the founders that came, a lot of people don't know this, the founders that came here split up after the first year, and about 8 of them went off to found Newport. So Portsmouth was founded the year before Newport. Only the second town in the state of Rhode Island, Providence, was first in 1636.
I know that the Historical Society, you mentioned, it's headquartered in a historic building of its own, the Union Church. I understand that the building itself got some damage over the winter and needs some serious work. Can you tell us anything about that?
Yeah, there was some water damage into the building, and unfortunately we lost some books that got wet in our library. But I think that work is underway to get estimates and put things together and hopefully get the building back together. There's been a dampness problem, and hopefully we can do something to reconcile that as well.
I guess the real question, you know, where do the funds for something like this, like that restoration, come from?
Again, going back to Herb, there was a great deal of activity when the church was restored by getting grants from foundations like Champlin and some of the other foundations around. And he was very successful in getting that. We don't have a great deal of money available. We live off a small portion of what the town gives us plus donations. And we find that you know, when people get more enthusiastic about things like this, that we'll probably have more interest, and hopefully we can draw some more money. One of the things about the foundation grants is that they want to see community support. So the community has to get involved somewhat too, and we have to show that we're generating a lot of energy in terms of new memberships and donations and things like that, and hopefully that will trigger more funds from several foundations that we're going to look at.
We have a short video that we made with you a few weeks ago in the Historical Society building, which you talk about some of the artifacts that are on display in both the downstairs museum and the upstairs meeting hall. Let's take a look at that real quick.
Okay. In 1938, and the main building that it has is donated by the Union Congregational Society in that year, and it was organized at that time. The location of the Historical Society on the corner of Union Street and East Main Road was once the Christian church in Portsmouth. There was one church built here in 1824, and then another church was moved, and it was this one was built in 1865. The Historical Society has this corner of the property where we have not only the church, but we have the original one-room schoolhouse built in 1725, and we also have the original town hall from the early 19th century. This church was used by the Society until it disbanded in 1939. The organ in the church here that was brought in 1902 from Emmanuel Church down in Newport. This room is what we call the Julia Ward Howe room. There are quite a few pieces of furniture and so on, like the bed and the chair, that came from the summer home of Julia Ward Howe. At the turn of the last century, Dr. Benjamin Green was a physician in town, probably one of the 3 or 4 physicians in the town. Portsmouth was a very small town then, probably with about 2,500 people or so in it. And what he did when he died was his medical equipment was left to the Historical Society. Also in the museum, and among the other artifacts that we have here in the museum, are a number of Revolutionary War cannonballs. We have various other artifacts from World War I and World War II. We have quite a few other things, some ancient Indian stones that were probably used for grinding. We have ship models, we have Victrolas and radios and all sorts of early artifacts from local history. This is a Chickering piano that dates back probably to about 1858-59. One of the really unique things that we have here in the Historical Society Museum is this hearse. Because this was donated to the Society in 1943, and at that time it was about 75 years old, it goes back to about the 1870s or so. The southernmost school that was distinguished from the northernmost school when they were authorized by the council back in the early 1720s. It's been restored. We have quite a few old desks here from different vintages, and the building itself is probably the oldest in the state of Rhode Island, the oldest school building in the state of Rhode Island, and possibly the oldest, there's some consideration it might be the oldest in the country.
The Historical Society buildings and artifacts are a true treasure of Portsmouth, but they can only be preserved with your help. Please visit the Portsmouth Historical Society website to see how you can become a member and help preserve our proud legacy.
Okay, we're back live with Jim Garman, the new president of the Historical Society. Jim, looking to the future, what do you consider are the key needs of the Historical Society?
The first thing we want to do is to make it more visible to the town. And one way to do that is to increase memberships. And we're working very hard at the present time. Several people have been involved in sitting at Clements Market and various other places, the Portsmouth Business Association, for example, in order to try to increase our membership. And those results so far have been quite successful. And it's interesting when sitting at the market, when people come by and you ask them about the Historical Society and they look at you, you mean we have a Historical Society? And I think that's one thing that we want to publicize so that people know that we have it and what they do. In terms of things we want to do, we have long-term goals and short-term goals, and they haven't all been finessed yet because we're still getting ideas together. But one of the things we have to try to do is to get the Historical Society building, the museum, open more often. And one of the things we have to do in order to do that is to get it repaired, which is underway. But also what we have to do is to consider the possibility of installing some kind of handicap access, which we don't have. It's been said that the church, the Union Meeting Church, the Historical Society building, is one of the largest meeting facilities in the town. Unfortunately, it's on the second floor, and so we have to do something about that. And there is consideration being talked about to put an elevator into the building so that we can be totally handicap accessible, which is a very important thing these days. Obviously, it's necessary. Also, we have to work on climate control. Climate control is very important for the storage of archives. I belong to a couple other historical societies, and both Newport and Little Compton have done a great deal of work lately on installing climate control in order to preserve archives. It doesn't take long for paper to disintegrate without climate control, and so I think that's something that we really want to work on as well. So those are among the things to protect the collection we have. We have a significant collection there, and it's something that we need to save for a couple more generations. So that's what we're really looking for, is a situation where we can get more members, get grants, get the building fixed up, and make it available for not just Historical Society lectures, but for other town lectures as well.
Yeah, Rich Rayner, our new town administrator, came down to the society a couple of weeks ago, and he was really impressed with the upstairs room as a potential venue for things, because it's just such a beautiful facility upstairs. How can the community get involved in supporting the Historical Society?
The community mainly can get involved by becoming members. But they need to realize that when they become members, we're going to start asking them to do things as well. I don't feel that this is the kind of membership that lets you send in your check every year and then show up once in a while. I really think we need working members, and hopefully we can create a committee structure where different people will have different functions, different jobs to do, and hopefully we'll generate a lot of enthusiasm that way as well. So membership is really important, and our membership chairman has said we want to have 1,000 members, and hopefully we'll be able to see how many we can get.
In the interest of full disclosure, I'm a board member myself of the Historical Society and the chairman of our membership drive. So I've got a kind of an interest
You can
in
talk
this.
about that better than I can.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's interesting, though, with the volunteers, because I know last year Richard Schmidt was trying to get some volunteers together to work on the hearse, the old hearse we have in one of the buildings. And I think that would make a great project for somebody who's kind of handy with tools.
Definitely.
And we've had several people during these things at Clements and the PBA and other things that people have come up and said, how can we actually get involved. And so there are a lot of opportunities here, depending on what their interests are and how much time and what their skills are.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of again, first educating them to the fact of our history, and then to the work of our historical society, and make it energetic, make it enthusiastic, make it a visible presence. The posters that have been done, things like that, are really impressive. And I think that's also eye-catching. And we're going to be working on things like newsletters as well to the membership. And I'm going to be writing some articles for the Portsmouth Times about local history too. So we're really going to try to generate a lot of interest in the town in that.
I think regarding the newsletters, it would really help if we had email addresses for all of our membership. I know that's probably not possible, but if members that are watching out there today could send us their email address or send us an email so we can get their address, you can do a lot more and a lot more cheaply.
Cheaper.
It's 50 cents to send a letter. It's nothing to send an email. And we might even consider doing more once we have a pretty good database.
In spite of the fact that we're a historical society, we are going to yield to the fact that we should use email.
That's right. Even historical societies need email. There is a membership drive underway, and as you mentioned, we had a successful sign-up at Clements a while back, just last week. We plan to do another one of those in 6 December, by the way, so people will get another shot at seeing folks down there and seeing some of the mementos that we have that actually make great Christmas presents.
Right.
Calendars and other mementos, coffee cups, Christmas ornaments, a set of old postcards. I should also mention that the Clements Market is also going to be selling our calendars. So people can go in there anytime, go to the front desk there and ask for a calendar. We also plan a townwide membership, a mailing rather, trying to make sure everybody knows who we are, where we are, what we do, and what we need. That should be coming up hopefully before the Christmas holiday.
That's
so a lot of us are trying to get this thing moving, and as you say, I think it fits well with your goals and objectives of trying to be more dynamic here.
I think one thing, if I can digress just a little bit, maybe we should talk a little bit about some of the things we have in our museums at the Historical Society. First of all, the Union Church was a church. It was built in 1864, replacing another church that was on the same site that was moved. In that church, which was again recently, 15 years ago, restored, we have, it's a beautiful facility. It has an organ that was brought in from Emmanuel Church. It has the Lord's Prayer in beautiful script up in front, a lot of really nice woodwork and things like that. And then in the basement of it, we have our museum collection, which is everything from things coming from the Battle of Rhode Island, old radios, a lot of things about Sarah Eddy, who was a very important Portsmouth resident back at the first part of the 20th century. And we have quite a bit of archival information there. We also have a room dedicated to Joey Ward Howe, who wrote a poem called the Battle Hymn of the Republic that ultimately became more or less the theme song of the Civil War. In the Old Town Hall, we do have the hearse, as you mentioned. It's a little bit ragged shape, but it's really, work could be done on it. We also have a lot of farm implements and things like that, old farm implements there. And displays. We have pictures, photos, and things like that around as well. But the real treasure, as far as our Historical Society is concerned, in my opinion, is the southernmost school. A one-room schoolhouse originally built around 1727, I think it is, and was the southern school in the town. There was also a northernmost school as well. And that school has been restored, and we have desks in there, and we have graffiti on the wall from the 19th century, and was quite a restoration project, and it's really something very useful to see. We try to do some kids activities as well to bring school children in and sort of give them a little bit about Portsmouth history as well. That's my dedication in this job as well as in my life, is to educate people about Portsmouth history. I mean, there's just so much of it, and hopefully to encourage some younger people, I hope, to get involved as well, because we really have such a historic tradition. It's so important. And if we look around at some of these other historical societies, we see much more activity, much more publications, much more things going on. And so we want to kind of generate a lot of that and get things going.
You know, I'd like to mention, too, that Gloria and Richard Schmidt go into the schools at the, I guess they're elementary schools, excuse me, and do some kind of activity with the kids about history and trying to get them interested in history. And it would be nice if we could get the school department to kind of jump on this thing and work with us.
Yes.
We have some, as you say, yourself, but we also have Ann Wagner, Gloria Schmidt, a lot of knowledge there that can be imparted to school kids. I realize their schedule is chock-a-block, but I can't think of anything more important, particularly in this age, to have some interest in than our history, our own history.
One of the things that I've done is the seniors of the high school have senior projects they have to do, and I've advised several of those on Portsmouth history. And I got a contact the other day at Clements about a graveyard that somebody an Eagle Scout project that he wants to work on, things like that. There's just so much of it around, and it's just, and you can still see a lot of it. I have a wonderful photographic collection of old Portsmouth pictures and postcards. It's over 1,000 images altogether, and some of the restaurants around in the town hall and a few other places have a lot of those old pictures on display, and that triggers a lot of discussion too. It's really good.
Yeah, I think we need to mention at some point the close relationship we have with the Portsmouth Free Public Library. We established a history center in there, and we have an ongoing program to try to digitize things that might be lost, photographs, documents, maps, things like that. And the Historical Society is a primary input to that process. And I think we can probably pursue that a little further as well. See if we can utilize some of the library facilities as we go out throughout the year, trying to educate people about this problem.
The library has a wonderful display case with all Portsmouth things in that Gloria and Marge change from time to time. It also has a collection of a great collection of local history, a whole big wall of it, really, including one case dedicated to the historical collection of John Pierce, our late police chief, who was very interested in history and wrote a book about Portsmouth history. And a lot of his archives and so on are there too. And they're obviously kept under lock and key, but they are accessible, and people should really realize that there's a great research capability at the Portsmouth Library.
Looking way down the road, I mean, I know you just came into this job, but you've been around the Historical Society for a long time. Looking way down the road, what is your vision for the Historical Society, say, in 10 or 20 years?
Well, I think to have displays of much of the material that we have. A lot of it is on display, but there's still more that can be displayed that is there already. Plus, we always look for donations when people are cleaning out their attics and things like that. And sometimes it's something that people think, oh, this isn't very useful, it isn't very valuable. And let us decide that. We'll take anything and evaluate whether or not it's of historic value in Portsmouth. I mean, we have just a lot of things, letters, diaries, things like that are really useful in studying local history. There are people, I specialize in the Civil War a lot, and the most valuable things in Civil War history are letters and diaries and memoirs written by participants. They give you a real insight into the common man's thing. And that's the same thing with local history, a collection of letters. On a couple of occasions, we've got a collection of letters. And what things were like in that part of Portsmouth in 1850 or something like that.
Yeah, or even 1950.
Yeah.
We came across, the fire department has 2 videos that were a drive around Portsmouth. And one was 1950, I think, and one was 1985. And even since 85, there have been major changes here. Yeah. But those are the kind of things that should be archived somewhere. And we're trying to make this History Center the place to do that, because that is climate control, that is secure. And one of the things we've done is set up a PC that's specifically for kind of genealogical research or historic research. If you were asked, and I'm going to ask you, I guess, why is the Historical Society important to Portsmouth residents? Or put it another way, why should people join the Historical Society?
I think one of the problems we have in our town is that people are very much neighborhood oriented. Part of that is because we don't really have a downtown as such. But yet the sense of community is there. We found that out with the 375th a couple of years ago when we had various functions. We had a lot of functions, and that we drew from all over. And it wasn't just the same people coming every time. It was a lot of different people. So I think that the idea of community, the idea of centering our society, centering our history, is something that hopefully will make people very proud of our history and aware and realize that it's a comprehensive thing of the whole town. This town has such diversity in it in terms of its facilities, in terms of its farms and fields and so on. We're really very fortunate to have as much variety as we have without having, well, the variety that we have, which is great. I think it's really important to draw the people in to the town, and I think one way to do that is through its history and through the awareness of its history.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things that we've started to do now that I think we probably can continue. But what are your immediate plans? You just hit the ground, and when you start moving to the next weeks or months, what do you plan to do?
Well, I hope to create within the Historical Society a structure so that different people have different jobs and different people have committees that can work with them to do various tasks that we have. I think we need to get the building fixed, which is something that's very important. We need to get some kind of climate control in the building, even if it's just high-powered dehumidifiers, because we have to dry it out. It got wet this last summer. And so that's short term. Long term, again, it's a matter of education. The only reason to have a historical society is to educate the public and to explain to the people that this was here, this was there. I've been a professional photographer as well as a historian, and I find that one old picture, especially where somebody might be able to find, oh, that's my house 100 years ago, is really important, really valuable.
Yeah. All of you in our viewing audience can help. You can help by becoming a member or donating to the Portsmouth Historical Society. Various types of memberships are available. Please go to our membership page on the Portsmouth Historical website at portsmouthhistorical.com. I'd like to also mention before we close that Our Town is coming up. It's going to air on the 2nd of December, and that's going to be the Portsmouth version. I hope everybody watches WSBE, I believe it is, on the 2nd of December to see Our Town, Portsmouth. Thank you very much. See you next time.
RIAP wants to make sure that every senior and disabled person has the opportunity to age in their homes and communities. We are reaching out to seniors in the community to hear their stories, so please contact us and tell us your story.